In the spiritual world, we talk about the higher self and the ego all of the time, and the ego often gets a pretty bad rap, especially in the more traditional religious view of the ego. But the ego actually does have a role, and when you're doing shadow work or self-discovery work, the ego is a really important aspect to understand because it's going to become your friend. So we're going to talk about that today, but before I do, hi, I'm Sandra from MysteryWitchSchool.com. I work with Wiccans to help them establish a deep spiritual practice so that they can create the life they want to create with joy, peace, and an empowered sense of self. And if that sounds like you, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss any videos. Today we're talking shadow work, and it is October when I'm doing this video. I live in the Southern Hemisphere, so we're not celebrating Halloween or Samhain. We'll be celebrating Beltane, but the Halloween vibe is still here, commercially anyway. And I know that in the Northern Hemisphere, it's really, really big this time of year. So I thought shadow work was probably a really applicable thing to talk about, because we really are talking about the process of creation and change and transformation. Pluto at the time of this video has just gone direct after having been retrograde, and he's all about transformation, and there's so much transformation going on at the moment in regards to planetary transformation that shadow work just seemed to be really appropriate to talk about right now. When it comes to shadow work, we have our higher self. So our higher self is really seen as being our spiritual self, so that self that is beyond the mundane cares of the world. It is that part of you that is connected to the all and everything. It is connected to the deities. It is connected to the current that runs through everything. It is connected to everything. That's really what we're wanting to get back to, that who we are, our essential selves when we're doing inner work and self-development work. Spirituality is so much about the inner work, and it's more about the inner work than it is about doing spells and magic and all of that other fun stuff. It really is, the happiness is found within, and the magic that leads to happiness is the magic that we do within ourselves. And so I've certainly spent most of my life going through this journey myself of self-discovery, going through many different traditions and learning about all of the different ways the ego is perceived, and working with the ego through emotional freedom technique, or tapping, which is the thing that I work with now. I've learned a lot about how the ego can really be our friend rather than our foe. So the ego is that part of us that's very mortal. It dies when we die. It is this part of the brain, our subconscious mind, that's here to keep us safe in the world. The problem with the ego is that it is programmable. So we get programmed from the ages of about 1 through to 7 years of age with all of the beliefs and the energetic assumptions and all of the stuff from around us when we're growing up. So the stuff, our parents' stuff, our culture's stuff, the religious stuff, the schooling stuff, all the stuff. And so when we grow up, the ego is being programmed to think in a particular way and believe and perceive the world in a particular way. And for a lot of us, it's pretty negative. It's not very positive, the way that we see ourselves and the way that we see the world around us. And what happens is that in mainstream culture, it isn't particularly spiritual. Okay, we're not really brought up really understanding true spirituality. A lot of religious upbringing is distorted. And so we have this idea of ourselves often as being incredibly limited when it comes to our spiritual selves, and a very negative view of what the ego is, and having the ego actually be the one that's running the show. So the spiritual path is about getting so in touch with our spiritual selves that our higher self starts to be the one that leads us down our path, so that we can connect with it when we need to connect with it. And the ego is actually supposed to be the servant of the higher self, not the ruler. So what we're wanting to do with the ego is have the ego work for us rather than being the leader. And the way to do that is through personal development work. Our ego wants to keep us safe. Its point is to keep us safe. So it will do whatever it can to keep us safe. And sometimes that can be incredibly destructive in the way that it does that. When we do self-development work, or what's called commonly shadow work in Wicca anyway, is to touch base with that ego, not see it as an enemy, but understand that we can reprogram it to have it work for us in ways that are beneficial and healthy for us, rather than being self-destructive and destroying our lives or our potential in any way. So some examples where the ego can kind of get in the way of your spiritual practice when it's running the show instead of you running it, is where you want to commit to a spiritual practice, but you find every excuse to not do it. Don't have time, don't have the right place to do it, don't have the right tools, too tired, couldn't be bothered, the kids, the dog, the cat, all kinds of things are reasons why you're not giving yourself, say, a daily practice, even if it's just for 5 minutes a day. That's the ego jumping in and finding excuses because for some reason the ego doesn't feel safe committing to a spiritual practice. And that's not because the ego is this nasty thing that is always trying to go against spirituality like some religious beliefs may believe. It's just that for some reason you're programmed to believe that working on yourself and really connecting to who you really are for some reason isn't important, or it just doesn't feel comfortable to do so for some deeper reason. The ego is that part of us that will often get in the way and sabotage the things we're wanting to bring into our lives because for some reason it believes that it's not safe to bring those things into your life. So it might be that you're subconsciously worried about what other people might think of you if you start to practice. You might think that you're not going to be good enough if you start to practice. You might go into comparison-itis and think, oh, if I start practicing and then I'm not getting the same results that so-and-so's getting or the other people out there are getting, then that means I'm no good, so you don't practice in the first place. That's all the ego. That's just the ego trying to protect you from feeling shame, feeling guilt, and feeling all those things that it thinks is going to happen. So shadow work and self-development work is finding this out about the ego and then changing the program. And that's what I do with EFT. Find what's going on in the ego and then change the program so that the ego is no longer seeing, say, for example, daily practice as being a negative thing, as being a scary thing. It's not comparing you to somebody else. It's not worried what are people going to think of you if you do this. It's not working on that self-doubt at all. It no longer has that self-doubt, basically. It's purely programmable. It's like a computer program. You can change the code and change the program of the ego. And that's where what makes the ego so wonderful is that you can change it. You can change the program. And that is what spiritual work from all the mystical traditions does. It changes the program, hopefully for the better, so that your ego can then be the servant of the higher self. And you can use your programming then to achieve the things that you're wanting to achieve in your life or do the things that you're wanting to do in your life and then express yourself, your true self, your spiritual self in the world. So the ego is there really to be your assistant with all of this. It's just if it isn't assisting you, it's just simply because it's been programmed in a way that's not helping. And it really is a case of changing the program. Now, changing the program takes a long time. It's not an overnight thing, and it does take a fair bit of effort and work, like any practice does. But it is well worth the effort to do so. So that's one of the reasons why I talk about this so much, and also one of the reasons why I do EFT and tapping and work with people in groups and one-on-one to help with these ego stuff that's getting in the way of you achieving what it is that you're wanting to achieve in your life. And if you want to find out more about how I can help you with that, either if you want to work with me one-on-one or interested in being part of a tapping group that I have, do go to my website and you can find the info there, or you can book a free 30-minute clarity session and we can have a chat about what's going on. And if we're a match, maybe we can work together on it. I'll put the link to my calendar in the description field below this video. If you like the video, hit the like button, share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Blessed be.